Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. This is the English translation of the Majlis of Hazrat Maulana Qamar Uzzaman Saheb Damat Barakatuhum, which took place on Saturday, the 27th of Sha'ban, 1445, corresponding with the English date, 9th of March 2024. Hazrat Wala starts off this Majlis by quoting the ayat of the Quran Majid, يا أيها الذين آمنوا اذكروا الله ذكرا كثيرا وسبحوه بكرة وأصيلا. It is an ayat of the Quran Majid, and it is speaking about, or rather addressing the people of Iman. O people of Iman, remember Allah and remember Him abundantly. Say His tasbih, glorify Him morning and evening. E Iman walo, अल्लाह का जिक्र करो और कसरत से जिक्र करो और सुबह और शाम उसकी पाकी बयान करने में मसरूफ रहो. Now Hazrat Maulana Mohammad Ahmad Saheb used to carry out dhikr isme zat of the personal name, meaning Allah. He would say it 70,000 times a day. Hazrat Haji Imdadullah Rahmatullah Alayh used to say it 100,000 times a day. Diya sukut, diya peyam, aisa sukut e sahran hai. Gaya mein bhul gulista ke sare afsane. When I went and I heard and I noticed the deadness of the deserts, it gave such a message to me that I forgot everything after that. Meaning, the example that's given here, even the waqi'at written in Gulista, I've forgotten everything. The silence of the desert gave me such a message that I forgot everything and everyone, meaning other than Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Our Hazrat Wala is going on, speaking of those couplets there of Hazrat Maulana Muhammad Ahmad Saheb, that if you go to Pulpur, definitely it is like that. If you go there and you sit under those trees, no one there, silence, the deadness, you would forget about everything other than Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You know, when we went to Bombay, and the people then came to Hazrat Maulana Shah Wasiullah Saheb and said to him that, Hazrat, let us take them and show them around here in the city. Then what did he have to say? Meaning, you want to show them this, that and the other, and maybe in all of that also it is something in the greatness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that they will see. But आसक गैर खाना ए दिल आसक गैर मेरे खाना ए दिल में कैसे के ख्याल रुख दिलदार दरबान अपना. How can anything else ghair, anything other than Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, how can that ever come in my heart? When the thought and the dhikr of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is my policeman at the door of my heart. It is my watchman. It does not allow any ghair, it does not allow anything to ever enter and penetrate my heart. Allah Ta'ala make our hal just like these couplets. Dhikr is something very, very sweet and something very, very tasty, as we can say in the spiritual sense, or delicious. Allah Ta'ala keep us in His remembrance, and Allah Ta'ala give us faraghat, make us free. Now we also need to make that dua, that Allah Ta'ala make us free, so then we can carry out the dhikr of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Allah free us for that. The sihat, the health also we have, is so that we can do this, that and the other. And then we carry on like that. And sometimes it comes that the health is taken away. But at that time there, the mercy of Allah Ta'ala is such that we get the same reward while being sick, even though we cannot carry out those a'mal. Look at the example of the siyam, the roza, and then it becomes qada. Now we can never ever, all the siyam put together can never ever make up for that one day. So we understand from all of this here that the asal, the qaza is not the asal. The asal is the month of Ramadan. Yes, if a person has a valid excuse and he just cannot keep his siyam, etc., then it's a different issue altogether. There's a difference between the two. Reading your salat here and reading your salat in the haram, in front of the Kaaba, there is a great difference between the two. And it is not necessary that you are making the dhikr of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala loudly. There was a king, and this king went to this Buzruk and the saint. They were there, and he may have been leaving at that time, and he goes on to say, Ke Hazrat, humko yaad rakhega, that Hazrat, remember us. The Sheikh, or that king, went on to say that, yes, okay, I'll remember you. That's when I have completed remembering Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. What was he actually trying to say? That he was all the time in the remembrance of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, rather turning the attention of these people to these great and subtle points. So this dunya, as we always say, is darul ghaflat, a place of negligence. But together with that, most definitely we can say that the dunya is darul dhikr as well, a place of the remembrance of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Now this kitab is a fantastic kitab. Ya Ilah al-Alameen, O Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, with the barakat of your Nabi Pak, Hazrat Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam, and his family and children, because of their barakat, accept our du'as and open the doors of your help and nusrat. So remember Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala abundantly and glorify Him morning and evening. Glorify Him morning and evening. So the ayat, Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu dhkurullaha dhikran kathira. This ayat is such that every one of us should remember it and keep it in our minds. On one occasion, Hazrat Maulana Shah Wasiullah Saheb was about to take our imtihan. And then he told us, I'm going to take your imtihan. So we all got busy in studying. The way it was there, the setup, it was the house and the courtyard or the madrasa and then the masjid. So Hazrat Maulana Shah Wasiullah Saheb used to be up and down from his private chamber, his house, and to the masjid. And he would come and go and see what we are doing. We actually thought that Hazrat would be quite happy seeing us in this condition. Nevertheless, after some days, after some time had passed, he called us and he said, together with all this ulum, also carry out the dhikr of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The kitabs you're doing, that's in its place. However, in between, also carry out the dhikr of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, because it is also greatly possible that together with this ulum, we get so munhamik and so we go so deep into it that we even become negligent, so much so that we miss our Fajr Salat, or we even miss the sunnats of Fajr Salat, whereas we know the great significance of the two sunnat of Fajr Salat. Some people, or sometimes in the holy month of Ramadan, it was even mentioned to Hazrat Maulana Shah Wasiullah Saheb regarding tilawat-e-Quran, that we would spend all our time in tilawat. He went on to say that carry out the dhikr of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala as well. Ala bi dhikrillahi tatma'innul qulub. Behold, it is with the remembrance of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that hearts find peace. Try it and test it. Do it and see. Carry out the dhikr of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala a few times and you will perceive nur. There was a murid and he said to the Sheikh that Hazrat, on the horizon I can see nur. I have conquered, I achieved, I have reached. Main wasil ho gaya. Hazrat then said to him, no, you haven't achieved. This is only what you're seeing, this is only the nur of your wudu. This is the first nur that you are seeing. You're only on the first level, the level of wudu. Sakht khush masti wale e Abul Hasan. Para rahat tabina judan. Now I said this here, these couplets, it has Abul Hasan in there. He's sitting here in front of me, so it came to mind. Allah Ta'ala give us the tawfiq and the hidayat of making hifazat and looking after our time. In Ramadan, don't let even one moment go in negligence. Do what you have to do and think that this is the holy month of Ramadan. And Ramadan, we need to achieve the nisbat of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in Ramadan. Now I used to carry out, Hazrat Wala is saying, Majlis programs, and so many women folk used to come for this Majlis. Hazrat Maulana Mohammad Ahmad Saheb used to also arrive, and he would walk in then, and I would want then to stop, and then he would say, no, usko jari rakhiye, continue, and then he would come and sit and he would listen as well. So in Ramadan, there is Aam Taqseem, a general distribution. We can't now get left out. What a distribution from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. When the last 10 days of Ramadan would begin, or we would reach that point, Hazrat Maulana Shah Wasiullah Sahab used to go on to say, Ab to hasil karo, at least now achieve and try and gain the grand connection and this nisbat and ta'alluq with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Allah ta'ala bedari ata farmaye. Allah ta'ala give us this consciousness. Let us wake up from the slumber. Waqt ki qadar. The appreciation of time. Kab kya ho jaye? We don't even know what will happen when. I just came to know now that Mahbub's son is ill. Now Allah ta'ala give us all afiyat. Hazrat Maulana Abdul Hayy Farangi Mahalli used to say, he has written that no Nabi has ever passed, neither any wali, except that they made the dua for afiyat. They never wished for this, that, hardness, difficulty, sickness. They all made dua for afiyat. Yes, after that, if some type of challenge, if some type of calamity came their way, then they made sabr. So long as there is one person in the dhikr of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Qiyamah will not come. When I went to Deoband, I said to them that Allah ta'ala is saying this, Nabi is saying this, Qiyamah will not come so long as there is one person to take the name of Allah. And today what we find, it is these very people who are making the dhikr of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, who are understood by others to be lowly and insignificant. Allah ka zikr सबसे आला है और बरतर है. The greatest is the dhikr of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Allah ta'ala's zikr is very buland and high. The person who makes the dhikr of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will also gain a high position. Now that is a different thing. If his niyat is wrong, etc., that is a different thing altogether. But this is the reality of the dhikr of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Just to take the name of Allah once, it is better than this entire world and whatever it contains. Somebody wrote to Hazrat Maulana Gangohi saying to him that dil nahi lagta, I don't feel like I want to make the dhikr of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, etc. Hazrat went on to answer him by saying that whether your heart wants to do it, you have bashashat or not, carry out the dhikr of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Keep your tongue moist in the remembrance of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. When you do that, most definitely your tongue will get admission into Jannah. Now how will it be such? How will it be such that if Allah ta'ala gives entry for your tongue into Jannah, do you think He will keep the rest of your body, the rest of the parts out of Jannah. Now it was these subtle points and amazing things that Hazrat Maulana Shah Wasiullah Sahab used to make bayan of, due to which those ulama fell on their knees, if you want to use the term, wo jhuk gaye. They bowed down in front of Hazrat Maulana Shah Wasiullah Sahab, understanding his capacity. It was at that time that Maulana Abdul Bari Nadwi became deeply affected, and thereafter he came to Fatehpur, to the Khanka of Hazrat Maulana Shah Wasiullah Sahab. So, even if you cannot do it sitting, while standing, moving around, doing your chores, finish your wird and your adhkar. For yourself this is, and for your children. Remember, the dhikr of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is very, very general. In it is also the 5 daily salat. Rather, that's the highest of the remembrance of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and then dhikr as well. So here, Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam was asked that which one of the a'mal of a person is the most meritorious. Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam said, it is the dhikr of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Therefore, be consistent, continuous in the dhikr of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Day and night, busy yourself in tasbih and tahleel, subhanallah and la ilaha illallah. And because in it, or create ذوق and शौक within yourself for this. दिन और रात के अशगाल में उसकी तस्बीह व तहलील के लिए अपने अंदर शौक व ज़ौक पैदा कर. Create that enthusiasm and the thirst to carry out the tasbih and the tahleel of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the kalima tayyiba, takbir, tamjeed, salat, dhikr, tilawat of the Quran Majid, the acquisition of dini knowledge, and besides that even Durood-e-Pak, Durood Sharif. All these comes under the dhikr of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. अपने औकात को सरवर दो आलम सल्लल्लाहु अलैहि वसल्लम की तरह मशगूलियत हक़ के साथ गुजार. Allahu Akbar. Just listen to that again. अपने औकात को सरकार दो आलम सल्लल्लाहु अलैहि वसल्लम की तरह मशगूलियत हक़ के साथ गुजार. Spend your time just like how Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam did in occupying himself in Allah. He occupied himself in the thought of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. और फरमाया अल्लाह का जिक्र करो, यही वजह सलाह व फलाह है. Make the dhikr of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, you would get success and you would get rectitude. And that's exactly when we say that when we read salat, that's what happens. Hayya ala salah, hayya ala al-falah. So salat is such. Hazrat Wala quotes a waqi'ah about a person, a Sufi, a person. He asked a great Arif that, tell me, if I'm in another alam, spiritual realm, like we can say I'm holding the leg of the arsh of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, at that time if the adhan goes on, what do I do if I'm in such a high spiritual state? He answered beautifully, Ajib da'i Allah, answer the caller of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Leave the arsh of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and come and fulfill your duty towards salat. You know, we used to tell Hazrat Maulana Shah Wasiullah Sahab, there's quite a bit of time for salat, so we can go a bit later. He would go on to say, what are you doing? Are you trying to stop me from salat? From that day, we started taking him in early. I had an opportunity of staying a few months in the haram, and we would sit in the Rawdatul Jannah. And then when the adhan would go, I would come out of Rawdatul Jannah and I would head in the direction of the first Saf. Now what can I tell you? Hazrat Maulana Abrahul Haqsa became very, very pleased when I told him about this year. Riyadul Jannah has its own merit, but at this point in time, the azan has been given, and there is a great merit for the Saf-e-Ula and the first Saf. So, just a little bit of riayat and consideration brings Tori se riayat par Allah Ta'ala ki bari inayat. Just for a little consideration, Allah Ta'ala then rains upon us some great favors. Hazrat Tanvi, if he was busy with a bayan and the adhan used to go, he would then stop immediately. Now, Rasulullah, let's continue. Aapne farmaya that the best work and the best end result is this, that at the time of death, a person's tongue is wet with La ilaha illallah. He also said that the Majlis of Dhikr supersedes and it is more meritorious than 1,000 rakats of Nafal Salat and making shirkat and joining in for the Janaza Salat and going to visit and make iyadat of thousands of sick people. That is the merit of Zikr Majlis. It comes in a riwayat. That Hazrat Adam alayhi salatu wassalam came down to earth, and for 300 years he cried. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala seen this type of situation on him. Allah ta'ala sends wahi to him that, "Oh Adam, why are you crying?" Adam alayhi salatu wassalam said, "Oh Allah, Rabbul Alameen, I cannot forget and I keep of thinking of the ni'mats of Jannah." Okay, let me just say that again. I'm mixing it up. So when Allah Ta'ala asked him why is he crying, he says, "Oh Allah, separation from the ni'mats of Jannah does not cause me to cry. Neither does fear of adhab of Jahannam cause me to cry. Rather it is that spectacle of and buka, being in that state of crying and weeping, looking at that particular spectacle." What was that spectacle about? 70,000 safs of the malaika around the arsh of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, all of them, the malaika, so fit, fresh, young, and surma in their eyes, next to one another, as you would say, hands in hands, with a loud voice, carrying out the dhikr of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This particular spectacle, I miss this the most. And what a type of wajd and kaif, what an alam of that there used to come at that time. Immediately thereafter, Allah Ta'ala sends wahi upon Adam alayhi salatu wassalam. "Oh Adam, raise your head to the heavens." Adam alayhi salatu wassalam does that, and what does he see? Nothing other than that spectacle that he missed so much. He looks to the heavens he looks to the skies, and he sees safs of the ma'soom and innocent malaika around the arsh of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, busied themselves. They are busy in the tasbih and in the tahleel of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And they are in such a type of a spiritual state, the malaika. Hazrat Adam alayhi salatu wassalam, seeing this, once again, what a spectacle, was taken aback. Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam has mentioned the best from all the acts of obedience and ta'at, ibadat, is the dhikr of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The Sahaba then mentioned, is it greater and even more meritorious, and does it even supersede that of jihad? That jihad itself is actually carried out to remember Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, to establish salat, to carry out the hajj, and to correct the ibadat. Jihad is actually for that. The purpose of jihad is that. Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam said, the most afzal and meritorious from all ibadat is the dhikr of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and from the adhkar, the greatest is that of La ilaha illallah. Hazrat Maulana Shah Wasiullah Saheb, we used to sit for dhikr after the Maghrib Salat, and as we said, the layout there was the house, and in the courtyard, the masjid. He would see us in the masjid carrying out the dhikr of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bil jahr, loudly, and then he would come and tell the women folk in the house and others. He would be so pleased to see us in that particular state and condition. I went and I stayed for 2 months with Hazrat Sheikhul Hadith. That was in Madina Munawwara. I even went to Saharanpur, where I seen how in that majlis zikr bil jahr was carried out. When I went to Haramain, Maulana Abrahul Haq said to me, after Asr, you should go to the majlis of Sheikhul Hadith. And I would go there. He had so much of attention towards me that I went there, and then after that, he would then ask, okay, Shah Sahab ke damad kaha? Shah Sahab ke damad kaha? Shah Sahab, referring to Hazrat Maulana Shah Wasiullah Sahab. Where is the son-in-law of Shah Sahab? People would say, we have seated him and he's going to eat here with us. He would say, no, he's going to eat with me. Wo bhi sa'adat hai. This is also a great fortune that for so many long days I had the opportunity of having meals with Hazrat Sheikhul Hadith. And Allah Ta'ala accept my participating in these majalis. And because of this type of compassion and great favor from the side of the Buzurgan-e-Deen, may Allah Ta'ala let me cross my path and pass on that side. Allah Ta'ala behra par kar de. Now even the making muzakara of masail of fiqh, that is also under the category of dhikr. MashaAllah, he has gathered much beautiful mawadiya, referring to the author. Allah Ta'ala mujhe bhi dhikr ki tawfiq de. Allah Ta'ala give me also the tawfiq of making the dhikr of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Now the month of Ramadan is the month of Quran. And if we say it is the month of Tazkiyah and Nafs, we'll say that also, and whatever you want to say. But Allah Ta'ala अपने औकात को ज़िक्र और फ़िक्र में लगाने की तौफीक दे. Allah give us the tawfiq and the hidayat of spending our time in His zikr and in fikr, making fikr for our islah. सबसे बड़ी बात, Allah Ta'ala अपने निस्बत और मारिफत से नवाजे. And the greatest thing is that Allah Ta'ala blesses us with His grand connection, that nisbat and ta'alluq, and recognizing Him. As I said, Hazrat Maulana Shah Wasiullah Saheb used to say, at least gain the recognition of Allah now. Ab to hasil karo. The last 10 days, last few days, last few hours, ab to hasil karo. Allah Ta'ala give us the tawfiq and the hidayat of living our lives according to the ta'limat of our mashayikh. ربنا تقبل منا إنك أنت السميع العليم وتب علينا إنك أنت التواب الرحيم بحرمة سيد النبي الكريم صلى الله عليه وسلم.